Roar. What a way to start a Friday.
Yeah. Mr. Walters, welcome. Good to see you. Nice to see everybody online. How the heck are you guys doing today? Oh, it's been a crazy week. Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm doing great now that I just muted my YouTube stream. I was hearing everything echo. I'm like, why am I getting an echo here? Yeah. I am doing wonderful. Like we said, it's always good to get here on a Friday. It means the week is almost done. 2 more work days till Monday, but hey, that's how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. 2 more work days till Monday. Oh, I
How are
like
you?
that.
How are you?
Oh, we're doing really good, really good. We've been hunting for a house for a long time. We thought we had one
Ooh.
yesterday, but at the end of the day, we're like, no, not didn't make the cut. So maybe
Is
next time.
is the market crazy in your area?
Yeah, but it's like doing weird things. Like I saw a map about a month ago about like what's going on with home prices. Like
Mhm.
everybody's had this like suddenly like this squashing, this coming down. Wisconsin's not had that, but it seems like that might be occurring. So
Yeah.
now like houses are not, you know, for a while it was you had like a 48-hour window to get an offer in on a house, and now
Mhm.
it's oh, we watched this one for a week, and
Hmm.
so but that's good. I don't want to be in a competition anyway. So
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. Yeah, I know
oh,
that's
thanks.
stressful. So.
Yeah. Oh, it's far less stressful when you say no, right? Like, well, good morning, everyone. I see Jesse finally getting to get in and play with Fabric Lake House. That's wonderful.
That's
Want to hear
great.
your thoughts on that and what you got going on there? Holy cow! It looks like it's hot all over the place. Did you say it's going to be 110 today?
That's the forecast. Yeah. So the news last night said they expected to hit 110. I just looked at my watch. For my area, it's forecasted to be 109, which means we'll probably hit 110. And you know, it's interesting because sometimes we get this little breeze that comes in as well, and you would think that that would help, but it really just hurts because you walk outside and that breeze hits you, and it's like you're in a blow dryer. It's uh,
Yeah.
if we don't go outside by 10, I never leave the house until much later.
Yeah.
I'm in kind of putting some stuff down. Almond's in this area as well, so
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
the sh-
Yeah.
the Shah. I don't know. It's just hot. It's just hot. Texas like Saudi is what Donald said. So
Yeah. Yeah. It just seems crazy all over the place. And we've got Dustin over on from Milwaukee coming from Wisconsin. So good to see you, Dustin.
nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. You're right. Here's the one on Texas is like Saudi.
Yeah, that's
All right. Oh, just
alrighty.
so much fun stuff going on. But we got a few rules. We'll run them through just like always. We're using Guided Cube rules. So please prefix any questions with a Q because we're here to answer your questions. We're going to be walking through some stuff, but if you have questions, we want to help you out. Helps us like find those because I'm not paying a lot of attention. Put a Q at the front of it, helps get it into the queue, and then we can move on. Make sure that gets answered. Do be aware that we're going to be running through some stuff. Me and Kevin have talked, kind of know what we're going to be talking about. If you ask a question at the start that I know we're going to be getting into later, don't be concerned that I didn't answer it right away because there's a natural flow to these things. So just be patient.
Mhm.
Don't spam the question. Because if you do find that you're spamming questions, we will fall on rule 2, which is, you will be blocked or put on a timeout for posting questions. So don't make us do that. We haven't had to do that at
Mhm.
all yet. So, uh,
I'd say the other thing about questions, right, is we're kind of like squirrels. If you put the right question in there, we'll totally move off to the next thing. So
yeah, well, that's true too.
we love questions, and it helps guide us where we go. So feel free to put things in. We'll expose the topic here in just a second.
Yeah,
Secret.
yeah. Well, I kind of changed the title, so.
Oh, geez. Well, everybody knows now.
Yeah.
Maybe I should read the things you put out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The one you just shared? Yes. Yes. All right. So today we kind of talked, or I mentioned in the post. You can see it in the title here, there. I don't know where it is. We're going to be talking about data flows and data factory. And wait a minute, are we talking data flows or data factory?
We're talking data factory more than data flows, right? Well, I was going to jump into pipelines today.
All right.
See, I really should read what you're putting out there.
Yeah.
I could go to data. We could go to data flows. Yeah, we were talking data flows because you were saying that Mim just put a nice tweet out this morning, and you
Mm-hmm.
kind of scanned through the article, or maybe you read it in depth. That he had a lot more to say about data flows. I haven't had a chance to consume that yet this morning. So, I was thinking we'd go through pipelines. We could, pop over onto data flows if we have some more time. But I want to kind of get into a little bit of pipelines and the configuration of it, and hopefully show you a few things that I've seen there. So,
Yeah, I am posting the MIMS data flow in the chat, so y'all can go ahead, click on it, check it out. He looks like it looks like it's a good article. Just letting you know, right?
he always puts some very good things out there. So,
He puts really in-depth research. I don't know how he has time to do that, but hey, Godspeed, good for him. So
yeah.
all right, so let's go ahead and let's talk about data factory and out in
Yeah.
fabric.
Well, and that is kind of interesting, like we were just saying a second ago, right? Under the data factory persona, data flows and pipelines exist in that same area. So, to me, that gets a little bit confusing coming from the Power BI side, or mostly from the Power BI side. In Azure Data Factory, there was a concept called a mapping data flow. In Power BI, there was data flows, and now we're calling them data flow Gen 2. So I always think of that as a progression just of the Power BI part of it. And they for data flows, yeah, they seem to have kind of married the two together in the data factory part. But I do want to get into pipelines and what you could use pipelines for. One of the best things that I think about pipelines is you could write a generic pipeline and make it customizable with parameters, and other inputs into it and everything. And we're going to kind of see that here in just a little bit. So if you go into the quick start that comes off of that page, you can see what they're talking about is going to be doing their copy activity. So in a way, I'm not going to keep this up as we do it, but I'm going to kind of walk through this same thing. And then we're going to dig into the code that this generated and kind of look through that and use that as a way to learn how pipelines could be dynamic. Okay. So I'm going to knock this down for just a second. Oops, that's not the screen I wanted up next. I want this one up. So what I have out here is a Contoso database. And I know you like AdventureWorks. I have AdventureWorks here as well. But I picked Contoso today, that we're going to bring in all the data from this Contoso database. And you could see you could see the way that it's set up here. I always thought this was kind of interesting. I get this database. I had it generated by the SQL BI tool, and I'll bring that link up here in just a second. And so in my orders table, there's 10 million rows, just over 10 million rows. And the way they set it up is the tables, in a schema called data, is pretty much your third normal form, kind of like what your application would look like. And then the views down below, that's in the DBO schema, set it up to be your fact and dimensions. So they kind of do a little bit different way of reshaping your data through the views, which is a fine approach. So we're going to pull in the base data off of these data tables today. Now, I do want to show, I think it's going to come up in this one. Yeah, and it's across a bunch of different ones, but you'll notice a lot of these column names have spaces in it. So, Chris, do you remember why we don't like spaces in Fabric?
We don't like spaces in fabric because they don't auto load into the tables. The table names have issues with that.
Yeah, the Parquet files, this is still a restriction at the Parquet level. They do not expect or do not accept column names with spaces in it. So we always have to transform that out. And I think we touched on data flows a while ago, and I think there was an automatic mapping method that data flows has now to help do that. We'll see how we do that here in pipelines in just a second. So that's going to be one of the configuration or one of the setups that we're going to have here. Okay, so we kind of understand what we're doing, right? We're going to bring over, a fairly good amount of data. We're going to use a pipeline. This is going to be pretty much a full load. It's going to just grab everything that currently exists in there. So again, why a pipeline versus a data flow or anything else? Well, you could use a data flow, you could use a pipeline, you could use a notebook, right? I think it comes back to everything we keep talking about over and over again, right? It's the skills that you have. It might also be the tools that you're just used to using, an architectural approach. You might want this to be more configurable later on than what you could do with data flows today. So, those are just some of the reasons why you would end up going to a pipeline. Chris, do you have any other thoughts on why you might end up using a pipeline than any other technology,
No,
or
I
just
think
because it fits
as
this
we're going to get
episode?
into this, you're going to see that the pipelines have a lot more flexibility in calling and doing things, and
Hmm.
establishing dependencies, and um, and if you're going to be doing that, right? Like if you need that inside your architecture and inside your solution, you should still be striving for keeping your solutions as simple and straightforward as possible. So if you're
Hmm.
using, or if you're using data factory to orchestrate stuff, use this for your connections and migration, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll see, let me go back. Yeah, you'll see here in this, I know you sent the link out to this already, right? But we have connectors here, and this
Mm-hmm.
could be one reason to use I think data flows have more connectors, but I think you're going to see this grow. Um, the other thing I wanted to bring up, we'll touch on it a little bit towards the end, is the pipeline can not only be used for copying the data as we're going to show here. I use pipelines a lot to orchestrate running other things, right? And so Mark brought up a comment in the chat: notebooks for bigger data. Sure, you might use notebooks because you also know Spark. You got some bigger data that you want to put in, but you may have X number of notebooks that you need to coordinate together. You could do that in a pipeline and just use it for orchestration rather than copy. And I'll touch on that when we bring up the pipeline here. And I know you put this link out here. I want to show it just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
This Contoso data generator. Like I said, this is how I generated the 10 million rows so that I could just get a bigger Contoso database than what was kind of out there by default.
Hey Kevin,
Yeah.
Aman has a question. Is it the same support for custom connectors in both approaches, so both like data flows as well as data factory?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think data flows has a better support for the custom connectors because most of the time your custom connectors are going to go through the gateway. I haven't seen how I could create a data source that goes through the gateway yet on the pipelines.
So
Historically,
let me clarify, because
yeah.
you're getting there, right? Unfortunately, no. Currently, they're
Okay.
not in parallel. The connectors were for Data Factory and like the Power Query connectors were
Hmm.
two separate teams that were trying to do things together initially, or like they're trying to coordinate. Now, I believe I'm like 99% sure that those teams have been reorganized together, so we're going to start to see those come together, but they're not there today. So those data flow Gen 2s may be more broad when it comes to connecting to things. Although I think
Hmm.
there are some advantages in the data factory connections that you may find beneficial.
Yeah, I think the data factory is going to run a little bit faster and everything. So, but yeah, you're exactly right. So, thanks for saying it more succinct than my brain was working this morning. So,
No problem. You're talking, and you've got stuff you're going through, and yeah, but
yep.
oh, good.
All right. And I
Yeah.
see Christina is thinking the orchestration sounds promising. So, we'll make sure we touch on that.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So, let's jump into our Fabric workspace. All right. I have this wonderful Fabric Friday. Good thing I didn't put an S next to that because it does not mean that other thing. Anyways, it's Fabric Friday. So you see, I already created a lake house out here, and I'm in the data factory experience. So I'm going to say new data pipeline, and I'm going to call it Contoso data and say create. And it's cooperating today. It's coming back pretty quickly. Okay, so it gives us this nice little view. And on the home page, we have a couple things up at the top here. We could validate, we could run, we could set up a schedule, view our run history. So we'll come back into all of this after we run it a couple times. But here is where the fun starts. These are common activities, right? And so activities are, think of block coding, right? They're the things that you kind of string together that you want to run within your pipeline. So we're going to use the copy activity, but let's expand it out a little bit. If you click on this activities ribbon, you see there's a whole lot more now that comes across this ribbon on things that we could choose. And there's so many that, we got a drop down that has a couple more. So all of these type of things we could string together within our pipeline. Let's go back to the regular home, and we could do the copy activity from here. You see it has some quick start to kind of get us going, or we could select it from up top here, and we could say just add it to Canvas if we're going to kind of customize everything ourselves, or we could use the copy assistant. If we click down here, it's going to give us the copy assistant at the same time. So we'll do that. And you can see we talked about the connectors. So through all categories, we have what all our different connectors are here. We could scope that down a little bit. If we pick workspace, we're going to see our objects that exist in Fabric, like our warehouse, our KQL database, or a lake house. Today, we're going to use a database. And I showed you I have a SQL database. So I'm going to choose SQL Server and say next. And I could either create a brand new connection, and I'll show it to you, right? So I would put my server name in, my database, give it a connection name, and then I'm going to give it my user ID and password. This kind of surprised me looking at this over this week. Currently today for a SQL database, it only supports basic. What basic is when you have a user ID password, SQL user ID password defined to your database. So through the data flow part, I believe it's supporting your OAuth if you're using your own credentials and everything. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on. I expect that to come later. I've already set up this, so I don't have to bother copying over my credentials and everything. So I'm going to select an existing connection. I am going to go ahead and test it, make sure everything works. Right, so I get a connection successful. And I'm going to go ahead and say next. And you'll see it's going to bring up all my existing tables. So I could come in here and start choosing. Remember when I showed you how the database was set up? I'm going to choose my tables that exist in the data schema because I want more of the raw data, not how they changed it into the views. Now, if I did on my side,
Oopsies, that was weird. Think you're back, Kevin? Are you back?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let's see what
Okay.
happens here.
My screen shares on the stream. Yeah, fade to black. I see Mark put out there. All right. It looks like I see
I
the
think we're
screen.
back. Are we back? Holy cow! What was that?
Wow. Yeah, I wasn't paying attention. I saw there was a lot going on into the
Oh, okay. That was weird.
saw there was a lot going on in the chat, but I figured you had it. I was just focused in on talking.
Oh,
All right.
wow. All right.
Hey, welcome to Fabric Friday. We got a few rules. Oh, wait, we're already past all that.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Just to
Let
get us
me
back in, there have been a couple things that have been going on. We're going to jump right back to you, but
Okay.
Johnny Winter is right. Often, especially if you're connected to like the local host database, you do need to have a gateway in this situation. So,
Hmm.
and that's not supported in pipelines yet. So, got to be a
Right.
cloud DB with the public endpoint.
Right. At this
So,
point, it would have to be that way. Now, if you're
mhm.
familiar with Azure Data Factory, the way they solve that in the cloud is you have to set up a VM and what's called an integration runtime that gets your connectivity to your on-prem sources. We haven't seen the direction, I'm assuming they're going to work the gateways all into what happens with Data Factory because that's the standard way through, the SaaS service that we're on, but that's still yet to come. So, yeah, if you're going to have to do something on-prem, I think you're really going to be restricted to Dataflow's Gen 2 at this point.
Yeah, you're spot on. Yeah.
If
Yes.
something else happened. All right, let me take a drink and move on.
Yeah.
All right, so as I switch out from coffee to water. All right, hopefully, I don't know where we faded to black. Let me back up a little bit here, right? We selected our existing connection and tested it, right? And this just has my SQL server set up, the database I want to go to, the credentials that I'm using. Now, if I go back to this, it's going to list out all of the objects that I'm able to use. I could even write my own queries if I wanted to. We're just going to blindly select the tables. And if we move on to next, we're going to say, where do we want it to go to? Now, this is one of the things that in a little bit, we're going to see how the pipelines and Data Factory call different things. All right. They have a source and then they have a sink. And I don't know why they didn't want to call it target. I don't know the history behind all of this, but the first couple of times that I got into this, it just like was changing my brain. And so I I had to start thinking of the sink as a kitchen sink. And I just got a water flow in this pipeline that's just throwing everything into my kitchen sink. But sink is going to be your target. And that's what we'll see this named. Here they call it choose the data destination. We're going to say lake house. And we're going to pick our existing lake house. If you wanted to, you could create one here, right? So we have our Contoso data. And now, remember, like, why did Kevin bring up about those column names earlier? Well, now we get to this point, and we're going to decide to put this right into the tables folder. We could choose to put it into the files folder and maybe load it as like a CSV or something like that. But we're going to put these right over into tables so they become Delta tables right away. And now we're going to have to go through and find all of those names. A customer is good, but like due date, you could see, and this is weird. It starts scrolling in the middle for some reason rather than at the top. So we have to come through and change all of these. And I'm going to show you real quick that it can be done, but I'm not going to do every one of them. I am going to leave this where it's at and switch over to one that I've already developed. So if I come in here and we take it all the way through, I know this isn't going to run, but let me just assume that here, if I switch back to the other one, like we take it through next, right? We could, the only next screen that comes up is our save and run. And then you could start the data transfer immediately. So I'm going to tell it not to start this data transfer because I didn't change all my column names. But you'll see here's what it generates. And it goes through an object called a for each, which iterates through an array, right? So it's going to process whatever its input is one at a time, and it's going to send that to the activities page. And then you could put multiple activities in here. And then it put this copy activity, and you see it just gave it a generated name at the end here. And so let's go back to the one that I have that's fully configured and kind of walk through again what everything is. So here I'm at the very highest level of our data factory. We'll call it a package or whatever we want to call it, right? And so we have this screen that is our parameters, variables, settings, and output. So you see it automatically created a parameter. That parameter is an array. And now we have this JSON in here. And I'm going to switch over. I pulled this out to Notepad++, and then told it to make it pretty so we could actually make it readable. So this is the configuration that it's passing on and iterating through here, right? So you can see it has a list of copy activities. And I think, yeah, so there's multiple copy activities that it's going through in this array. So that for each that we have here is going to read through this JSON and take every entry and process each entry kind of one at a time. It could do things in parallel. So it could read a bunch of them, and you could configure this, let's say 4 of them, and have 4 of them kick off all at once. And then the next 4 will happen or whatever. So that for each, it doesn't have to single thread. You can make it single thread, but it's going to use this array, and this is coming into us from a parameter. So Chris, just stop me if I don't seem to be making sense, if I'm rambling on here.
No, I think you're spot on. I'm listening.
Okay. So within this for each, you see we have the settings, which is just, again, how we name things, right? You could come in and change your name if you wanted to. Well, not your name, but the name of the for each item. You could change your name here too, but, wouldn't stick legally. And then this is the thing that helps drive the items, right? So it's saying from the pipeline, we're going to take the parameters and we're going to use this parameter called CW items, and is that generated name.
Okay.
Now, clicking on that, it seems kind of hard to mess with. If we click on just a white space area, you see we're going to get this pipeline expression builder. This is what's going to help you build out those expressions. And the expressions is, again, what helps make all of this customizable. So you need to start coming in here, learning how to work with this language, right? It's a little bit just like anything else that you've kind of messed with, right? But, again, it has a little bit of its own idiosyncrasies. So you can see here it has a variable that starts with @ and it's that pipeline, right? And so it's saying from the pipeline level, look at the parameters and then grab the parameter called CW items AIQ in this case. And this area down here kind of will help you get to those different things, right? So we got activity outputs, parameters, and it kind of scopes it in for the level you're at. But if you ever need to see all functions, right, you could come in here. This is kind of your help area, and you could click on these different things. If I wanted to help change it to, click to insert the expression. Let me go ahead and do that just to show you what happens. Oops, I did it twice. That's okay. Right. So you can see it just inserted this @ string, right? And right now it's not correct, right? But it'll show you the red line. I'm going to cancel out of that instead of saving it. But at least it gives you an idea of what all the functions are, right? To help you start building out what you need inside these expressions. So let me back out of that. And then within the for each, it says, hey, what are your activities? And in this case, we only have the one activity, and it put in a copy activity. And remember, our activities are up here, right? We could see those different copy activities right there, right? We could have just said, like, add the canvas. Or here, I could edit and add it within my for each by hitting this edit area. right? So now I'm within the for each. I have a copy activity. I could put other activities in here if I wanted to. Let's say that every time one of these copies finished, I wanted to give a message to a Teams channel. So I could put this Teams activity in here, and then I could say, actually, let's not say success. Let's say it failed. These little icons, can we see those well enough? Oh, it went away. Here's the success icon, right? The check mark. That individual copy activity. Did we go away again? I can't hear you, Chris. I can see you talking, but I can't hear you.
How about now?
I can hear you now.
Ooh,
Christina says
apologies.
it's blurry, but sometimes, Christina, it takes just a
Okay.
little bit for everything to kind of catch up and get unblurry again. So,
All right. Well, all right. Sorry about that.
that's
Technical
okay.
difficulties. Yeah, it is margarita time.
Margaret, yeah, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Mark commercial breaks. That's right.
Yeah, not very good commercials. We're gonna have to fill in that dark period with a good commercial or something
Well,
later on.
it's for the YouTube to like clip in and out. You know how they like to slot in a video in the middle of these things. That's where it goes.
All right. So let me see if I can reset again. I don't know where we kind of left off at, but I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. And just to see if I could kind of reset a little bit, I'm gonna back up here to I was in my for each talking about the activities.
Yep.
And I came into my for each activity. I have this little edit button here, which then brings me to a new canvas. And you can see my path here, right? My breadcrumbs. Hey, I'm at this Contoso data copy from database pipeline in the for each activity. And now I can add actions, right? Activities is what they're called here. So I was saying, hey, if I wanted to, I have this copy data that's going to run multiple times. It's going to run once for that whole array that I showed. And if I wanted a detailed message to go into a Teams channel, I could come here, pick my Teams activity, and pick this on fail and copy that arrow over. And this again comes back as what I was mentioning is block coding. It's a very interesting concept. It's been taken off over the last, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years. You see it in a lot of products, but it makes things a whole lot easier. And then I could come in here and configure my team setting. I would have to sign in to my tenant and everything. So I'm not going to do that because I'm going to go ahead and delete it anyways. But what this would do is if one of these happened to fail, it would give me a message and I could customize that message to say, this particular activity for this table failed. So I could get a very detailed message into my Teams channel, or I could send it as email or whatever, right? So let me go ahead and delete that. Christina was also resetting me, was looking at the success icon. So good. Thank you very much. So where I found that here, and see if I could kind of maybe keep this time. Hey, look at that. So you can see we have multiple little icons that happen from this side. And the two that you were going to work with most is the check mark. The green check mark is on success. So you're saying when this activity succeeds, you're drawing your line like I had to say, this is the next thing I want you to do. So this gets back a little bit to that orchestration, right? And then here on fail, like I showed, if you fail, I want you to do this action. And that's the one I want you to send something to Teams to report the failure. Or something on failure, you may end up running a different process to clean up or something like that, right? So that gets into your whole orchestration. These other ones is on skip and on completion. So on completion is going to say whether it was succeeded or failed, it's going to do something. And on skip, boy, that one, I haven't used it very much. So I'll have to come back to you on that. Ping me offline if you really want to know what that is. There's ways you could set conditions and things on the activities. So I think that's going to be how I drew that line. There's conditions you could put on that fail or succeed, and you could tell it to skip the next step. So there may be a configuration of why you want to skip something. Okay, so here, remember we started getting into, oh, look at that. They called it destination here. Azure Data Factory calls it sync. I should read these things before I do presentations. So we're going to have general again, and then our source. And you see here what it put together is, remember we selected our connection earlier. And so it's putting that connection here, and it's putting it that the connection type is SQL Server. And then you could choose, do you want to do a table, a query, a stored procedure? We're doing a table. And it's say, hey, what's the table name? So the table name is going to be data, right? Because this is schema dot the table name itself. So it's interesting it didn't make this configurable, because what if I would have had multiple schemas? Maybe I should go back and try that and see what it does. But I could add dynamic content. You could do a shortcut of Alt-Shift-D to bring up, again, it's the same window. And I just clicked on this instead of doing the shortcut, but brings up this pipeline expression builder again that we covered. But you can see it's getting this from, in this case, it's using item. So item is the item that was passed into us from the for each. And then it's saying it's getting the source table from that. And so it pulls that variable out. Let's see if we can find that in our. So here, this is the item that it's passing over. And however it built out the table, right? It's gonna, I wonder where it built that from. Let's see, because I'm not finding the actual word table in here. Oh, here it is. Sorry, I'm up a little too far. I'm down too far. Here's source table.
You zoom in, that might be a little small
Yes.
for people.
I'm going to scroll up a little bit first on this. Let me expand this back out. So this is this is the mappings. Let's take the mappings away. And so I'm back to where I was. So this is like our first copy activity. And what I have highlighted is there's a variable in here, or a JSON object called source with a name table. And you can see it's saying, here's our source table. And so it's going to get currency exchange and then plug that in to this here. So it comes out with data.currency exchange. So this is how it becomes configurable. And then same with our destination. Let me cancel out of that. And this is what was kind of interesting, right? Because if I go back to here, we have destination. But then in our mapping things later on, this is where it starts using that word sync. So just remember that on the sync is going to be your target. It's going to be something in your destination. And we'll see this mapping here in just a second. Okay, so the same type of configuration. Here it's telling us the workspace data store is going to be the lakehouse name, and then it's getting that configurable item.
Are you able to click on, Fernando's asking if you can click on the preview data. Is that a thing? It might have been a bit ago.
Right here. So I could try. Okay, so I got to give it a name. Let me grab the name from here. Since I typed poorly this early in the morning. And if I click OK, that just goes away. Okay, so here I gave it the name, right? And here's the preview that came up for it. Nice question, Fernando. I didn't try that yesterday while I was building out. This one's kind of nice. It's an expandable screen. They didn't have a lot of that. I hope they keep getting their UI improved a little bit.
Yeah,
So there you go.
nice.
There's 10 rows from this. This may be all the 10 rows that's in there.
Simon has a good question too. Is the copy activity designed for the like a one-time data transfer, or would you use it for subsequent loads when rows are added to the source?
Am I allowed to spend $1 on this?
Sure.
I think it depends, right? It really is kind of brought in Data Factory itself. We have built out things that uses change data capture from a SQL source, and so we build it incrementally. But what we do is we save that into some intermediate tables first, kind of like your stage or your bronze or whatever, right? So you may get what changed from that source from within the last time period since the last time you pulled it, right? And now that's incremental, but you're going to do a second step to append that or merge it. You're really going to probably merge that into your next table, right? Or do whatever else you need to do for your analytics. So that's kind of where that medallion architecture comes in again. You may pull the data on this run. It's going to be incremental data, and then you got to do some other activity to figure out how that merges in. I think there was, when I went through this, there might have been a way to say, let's look through the JSON again. I thought, and maybe I was looking at something else to see if it was when you set up the mapping. I can't remember if there was an append. Let's go back to my other part here. Let's actually, I don't want to get myself too far off course. I think you can do some appends as well. I haven't done it that way, but I think you can. So I'm sorry, who was it that asked that question?
That was Simon.
Simon. Yeah, Simon, let's see where we end up. I know we're getting close on time already. So if we have just a little bit more time, I'm almost done with this part. We'll see if we could come back to that. If you drop this
Data
into,
flows Gen 2 allow it to.
yeah, that definitely allows appends, right? Now, a lot of times you got to think about your source system, right? Is it really just appends? Depends. It depends. Because how many source systems are only adding new data, right? And how many source systems are changing data, deleting data, and adding data, right? So,
Well, and Mark hit on it too, right? Like he's asking if you drop the file, you'd have to move it into tables, right? Yes, yeah. And that's where. Oh,
thanks, Johnny.
It depends.
Yeah, I kind of caught it as I said that because it sounded so much like that.
But Mark's right. So we are just landing the file in. It still has to go into the Delta table. In theory, we could do something at that point in time to do a merge or something along those lines. But I'm going to say I like the copy when we're doing truncated load type processes, right? So like we don't care about what it was yesterday or any of that stuff. We just want that file, copy in the file, load it in, and you're good to go, right?
Yep. So yeah, kind of the last part of this, right? You can see this mapping activity. Again, it's getting it from our item. It's getting the copy activity translator. And if we go back to here, here's our copy activity item translator. And then it's got all these mappings down below. So you see that's how it makes this very configurable. If I was, needing to change this and not go all the way back through and generate the code, I could come in here and change this JSON, put it back into that original parameter that we brought up from the entire package, right? So let's say I went through all this and I forgot to change to take the space out of one of the names, right? I could be coming in here using a tool like Notepad++ that I can make the JSON very pretty for me. Come in here, find that, change it, put that in as my parameter or change my default parameter, and I'm not changing the rest of my code. So again, it becomes very configurable.
Yep.
Okay.
Tons of capabilities here, but
Tons of capabilities. So let's go all the way back up to kind of the scenario that you brought up and touch on the orchestration just a little bit again, right? And I kind of showed that here, or I kind of showed it a little bit, but let's kind of cover it because I want to make sure we see this. If I wanted to, if I had a notebook I wanted to run before this, I could put this notebook in here, right? And I could say, hey, on the success of a notebook, now I'm going to go into my for each. You kind of brought up that if I, like maybe I do a truncate and load or something like that, maybe this notebook is going to clear up, excuse me, hang on a second. The notebook could maybe clear out that table or do something else with it. I could come in here, I could put a set of variable is another parameter, right? Something that has to happen before it goes into this package. So this is the whole orchestration that I was talking about. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to keep my pipelines very small and very specific, right? So I may have a pipeline that is doing copying from data source A, right? And then a different pipeline that is configured almost the same way from data source B. And if I want those to run at the same time because I got enough capacity, or I want to make them, like one has to depend on the other, I produce what I call driver pipelines, right? And those driver pipelines is really just my orchestration. To call this pipeline, then call this notebook, or schedule all of these at the same time. And I find keeping those in different objects makes maintenance a whole lot easier. So that was kind of the orchestration part I wanted to touch on a little bit. And I know Christina said, "Ooh, orchestration." She was hopefully, Christina, that helps what you were making a comment on earlier.
Right, because now we can do all of these things and we can coordinate that all, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now I do want to show. Oh, there's no output today. I thought I ran I ran this one. Sorry. Let's go all the way back up to here. Oh, there's no output there either. I could have sworn I ran this yesterday, but maybe I kept it only for one day. But you can monitor from. That's interesting. Oh, this data set's refreshing. You could come into your monitoring hub and see past activities. So did it go? It was there for a second. I saw it.
And
I
then it
saw it flash up
disappears.
and it disappeared. Wow, it must only keep the activity for a very short period of time. You could see here that it did tell me it ran, today is the 18th. Yeah, it ran yesterday at 5 o'clock. It was completed. I could retry, view detail, pipeline run. Let's click on it from here.
So, Johnny, for this
There
one,
it is.
could you store the JSON file in one lake and call it for the pipeline and inject it into parameter? For that, you're going to have to wait for the live stream I have coming up on metadata-driven frameworks in like a month. So it's a little bit of wait, but that's coming.
Can we wait that long?
Yes,
Johnny, can you wait that long? But
I bet you can figure it out by then.
Yeah, Johnny, I think your question is on the right track, and exactly. So, we have done some of these to where we've actually produced like a table, right, rather than keeping the JSON file somewhere. Just because it was easier for us to show people how to edit rows into a table and stuff like that. But yeah, there's multiple ways you could do a metadata framework. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that one. I didn't know that was coming up, Chris. I learned something
September 27th. Here, link is coming out.
today.
I actually saw a demo of this. I was talking with Turner the other day, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to do this. I thought about even having an extra session for that, but we'll hold off.
Nice.
It'll be good.
So you see, I finally navigated on to the from the monitoring hub to show my run from yesterday. And even though we know this was 10 million rows, right? All those tables and the biggest table, 10 million rows, the 10 million rows took about 2 minutes to move in, right? And that's obviously gonna that could change, depending on how fast your source system is, right? But coming into Fabric itself, I think 2 minutes for 10 million rows is respectable.
So, Kevin, I'd like to get your take on this. I have seen with pipelines
Mm-hmm.
that pipelines are great when we're talking about bulk movements of data where there's low to no transformations coming in. So if you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
your bronze layer and you're talking about pulling it in from like defined sources or even just like files that we're copying in, that seems like
Mm-hmm.
it works exceedingly well. If I need to do additional transformations, I'm going to want, while there's some of those capabilities inside of a pipeline, I think it's actually much better to choose one of two paths. One is if you like Python, to do Python notebooks and then have your
Mm-hmm.
data factory call that Python notebook at that point. So use the copy test to bring it in, use the notebook for populating and managing that silver, gold, or platinum layers. And then, or having a data flow gen 2 so that you're managing the entire flow, end to end flow, and really you're just using your pipeline for orchestration and calling that pipeline and saying, yeah, go ahead, bring this in as is that, have you seen
I,
that as well?
I would agree. I'm tending to use pipelines for orchestration a whole lot more than I am for the data movement itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was just kind of a little bit of what I prefer. So one of the things that kind of got me started on this, and I'm going to see if I could find.
Pull your screen back up.
Yeah, well, wait a minute on that until I find the right screen,
Oh, I'll put it back
because I
down.
may yeah, I may mistakenly show something I'm not supposed to show.
No problem.
Um,
And while you're pulling that up, Stina is mentioning that her current update process takes 45 to 60 minutes. Straight up, that's a legit thing, right? And that's one of the things that Data Factory can help you do, which is like chunk those out, use the right tool for the right job. So if that copy process is the best and the fastest piece for it, use copy. Then, on a process by process basis, you have that flexibility to say, okay, in this case, my Python is the path I want to go down. I want to run this. I'm going to use this. Fantastic. Or I'm going to use a data flow and I'm going to do this there. Either way, you're just managing that pipeline that's Data Factory. And then inside that pipeline, you can go in and see, is it a notebook? Is it a data? All right, you can see it through
mhm.
there, right?
Yep. So if you want to bring my screen back up, so
Sure.
kind of what got me going down this path is what I originally thought at the end of last week is we were going to go through this 3-part article, this series by Sean here, and very quickly I noticed it got into that whole configuration, part, and what he's talking about is how you could use a start index, end index interval to separate out, or actually copy data from your source system. And you could say in your pipeline, grab this amount, have another process that's grabbing another amount. So you could multi-thread that going over to your source system. And so if you go through this 3-part article, that's going to be another, in a way, this is kind of metadata driven, right? But it's a way to make things faster because you're throwing, again, more processing power at it to say, hey, I'm going to run this. I'm going to run 3 instances of my copy all at the same time. So I make it faster, right? To get the parallelism and everything. So I was thinking we'd go through this last week, but like I said, I wanted to get a little bit more higher level on how to make things, how things become configurable there. So this
All
would
right.
be a technique. Yep.
Yes. Now we have a couple questions in the queue that I want to make sure
Okay.
we have a chance to get to. And Fernando asks, how do you manage workspaces with pipelines? What's your current thought or strategy around this, Kevin?
How do I manage workspaces with pipelines? I tend to think it the other way, Fernando, is how do I manage pipelines within workspaces? So when I reverse it, I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Now,
So my guess is, how are you going to break out your workspaces? Like, are you
yeah,
going to have a workspace with pipelines, a workspace with lake houses, a workspace with data sets, a workspace reports? Is that something you're going to do, or how are you thinking
yeah.
about that?
Well, that's a good translation. And my thinking is you're producing workspaces based upon how you want things grouped together, mainly for security, right?
Mhm.
What people do I want to give access to this workspace that they're going to be able to manage the objects or do the work that's in there? And so he kind of clarified his question here. Do you create a workspace for each stage? Um,
And yeah, he's asking, do you create a workspace for each stage? But Johnny is right. Separating these things out makes a lot of sense, because then we could separate out and have different amounts of compute in each space.
mhm.
Unfortunately, in preview, all of
You
our
can't.
data flows and lakehouses have to be in the same workspace.
Yep.
Okay.
In my long-winded answer, that's kind of what I was going to get to. Is it feels very difficult right now to say, I want this orchestration pipeline to orchestrate pipelines from three different workspaces. Everything seems like it has to be within its one workspace. So you're going to have to think about how you're going to put that together. My current approach right now is I'm putting workspaces together kind of per source system and then combining them into my later stages, my silver and gold later on type of thing. So I think
Yep.
that seems to be working. There's techniques to get at, because the one lake can easily span workspaces, right? I think you got to think about it at the data level, and I'm breaking it up by source systems today.
Yep, I think that makes good sense. And then final question here, is Aman is asking, is Data Factory a workable solution for data quality integrity checks? If you don't access to have the ability to check upstream, I'm sure, assuming we could do Power Query transformations now. That is a lot that he is fitting in there. In fact, let
Hmm.
me go back to here. I'm going to say, what about data quality integrity checks? Is Data Factory a good process for that?
I'm going to go with a hard no on that. Right? Data
What?
Factory is pretty much just going to bring the data over with its copy activity that we saw. I think you're going to do your data quality, your integrity checks outside of Data Factory. Chris, are you going to go total opposite on me?
I'm going to say you're going to use Data Factory 100% to orchestrate how you do your loads and transformations, and when
Hmm.
you call different notebooks. So you're going to do your copy in, then you call your data quality notebook for your bronze to silver. So before it
Right.
goes to bronze, or before it goes into silver, you run your data quality checks.
Oh,
Then
yep.
you run your notebook that is your load from bronze to silver. Then
Right.
you use Data Factory to call your silver to gold data checks.
Yep.
Before you do that check, you make that test out, right? So you
Yep.
you test it at each of these stages. So would you do the data check quality checks in Data Factory? No, you'd probably use other tools for that.
Right.
But that's where you'd create your branching, and like, hey, if these things fail, kick it out, fail it back, create a rollover process. So you go back to what it was previously, or whatever the case is, right?
Yep.
And then move on.
Yep. Exactly. So you're going to use it to orchestrate that, but I agree with you. Your data quality checks itself are probably going to be written in something like a notebook, right? That's going to
Yeah.
be the best place to do it. And then you may assign severities to your data quality, right? You may have something that is so severe you need to stop your processing. But you may also have something else that is just kind of like, hey, this is a signal for something else. You might want to log it, a message to a Teams channel,
Mhm.
something to that effect, right? But you're not going to stop your overall processing. So,
Yeah, and Johnny's right about being aware of proprietary data types that's out there.
mm-hmm,
Um, uh, this is a legit thing, and frankly, that should be one of the things you're checking on your bronze to silver data quality checks is what has happened to these files, because that bronze layer could be anything, right? Like, yes, you think it's going to be in a certain format like it's always been, but bronze layers inherently can be non-structured information that can flow in. So if that primary key suddenly becomes a video, you don't want to load that into your lake
mm-hmm.
house, right? You don't want to have these things because you'll have downstream issues, right? Um,
Yep.
but we are over time. We are extended. What a great demonstration today, Kevin.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. And a big thank you and shout out to everyone that joined us today. Sorry for the little issues and whatnot that we had. I don't.
It just
I
proves we're live.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, and
Thanks, Mark.
yeah, thank you, Mark. We are yes, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. That's that really we appreciate all the shout outs and your support. That is a big deal. So thank you guys all. Next week, maybe we do data flow Gen 2, or how's that sound, Kevin?
I could do that.
All
Yeah.
right, let's do it. We're calling
All
it
right.
right now, data flow Gen 2. And next week we'll do a charity. Any and all funds we raise next week, we'll send that all, and all the Depends money is going to will go to Maui. Okay, so we'll send this all over to Maui and help those people out. That's a horrible thing that's going on over there. So join us next week. Data flows Gen 2, and we'll support Maui. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Peace.
Peace. Baker Tilly Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.